because the patriarchy.
Yeah,
Because the patriarchy.
Patreon.
Did you
Patreon
just
for all
assume their gender?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yep,
God! You did
I
not
did.
just do
I
that.
love to assume gender. Every night I assume Nicole's gender.
Okie dokie. And with that, we're live.
All right.
Oops.
Welcome to very inappropriate D&D. If anything we say on this podcast makes you go fetal, then that's your problem.
Not ours.
You should be at least
Not
level
ours.
3 to listen to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You knew what you were getting into.
You knew what you were getting into. And this is old school D&D, so let's just admit everybody listening to this is a crusty old bastardess, and they can take it. They rolled. They had character. They sat there at 12 years old, and some college kid said, sorry, your character just got killed by, green slime. Make a new character. And so that made you tougher and better and strong enough to stand up to this podcast.
So speaking of characters and getting better, what did Rock Powers become?
You don't know yet.
Well, we don't know yet. I kind of know yet because I know what's going to happen. Well, it's kind of hit me to that and said, what character are you going to make? But we know we're heading to a place where we're going to have that D&D cartoon moment where, he's like warrior, cavalier, acrobat.
Druid.
Here's a bunch of classes we made up for the new handbook.
So are you assigning? Are you assigning the change, Walt?
No, you're picking it.
Are you assuming my class?
I am. I'm assuming your class. I'm gonna say you pick the Prometheus class.
You know what?
Because he deserves his own dang class.
There should be a Prometheus class. I know where I'm headed. Yeah, I know where I'm headed.
Yeah.
It's funny too, without sort of any stat enhancement or anything, I qualify for the class.
Nice.
But here's the wrench. And I have like low strength. I have like 9 strength because he's just a white, Air Force boy pilot who never had to do a hard day's labor in his life. So I remember
you played with a stick.
Yeah. I remember, that's the thing they're finding out now among modern males, not among us probably, because we are all
Grow back then.
But they're finding out that men are now have no grip strength. That's actually a thing. And it's linked to dropping testosterone. And the easiest way to improve it's linked to the shoy. Sweet, I'm gonna get your shoy and improve my grip strength. But the easiest way to increase your grip strength is actually just to hang from a tree, and your grip strength gets stronger. But they're finding a lot of little guys now, the little soy boys, they can't actually shake hands or have grip strength. So that's an interesting thing. So I remember this old D&D article where they tried to say, if you lift this much, this is what your strength would be in real life. So a guy with 9 strength is probably like an average person.
Yeah.
I would say.
From 8 to 12 is average in the D&D handbook.
Yeah. So he's just barely average. Basically, he does not even lift, bro.
Yeah.
Doth thy even lift? So
Doth thou even lift, bro?
I actually wrote all of the 6 main playable character races, and then I just rolled the dice to see what I would become. So that's how I did it for mine. Are we disclosing, or are we waiting for next week?
It's up to you.
I guess let's wait for next week.
All right. Well, then we'll wait for next week.
Let's give is there anyone even in the audience tonight?
We got Captain Kogosha. We got Sparky 6868.
We don't need anybody else.
We got those guys.
I'm just wondering which A-team character are you? Because I'm kind of picturing you as Faceman, Nick.
Me? That was spot on my MOS. That was what I did.
Yeah.
I was called my name was Brain. That's what I got called.
Nice.
Yeah.
What were you called, JR?
A lot of bad names, generally by my NCOs.
Hell yeah.
And Walt, what were you called?
Depended on the time in service, really.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. It's usually it's when you're a private. That's when you earn the most honest nickname. Everything after that is suck up stuff.
Yeah, because when I was in basic, the drill sergeant started calling me lieutenant. He's like, "You march like a freaking lieutenant," and I'm like, How does a lieutenant march? He goes, like you're going to stick up your ass.
I heard once that I marched like a pregnant dinosaur with trick knees. That was fun.
I see like a point, like if I become insanely wealthy off GE, I see like myself like at an older age, like you know how guys used to go play fantasy baseball?
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like I would sign up for fantasy basic training again. Just because
How do you do fantasy basic training?
I don't know, but I crave it. Like as I get older, I crave that kind of abuse. I just want some like 6-foot swole Mississippi mud black drill sergeant to just scream in my face that I'm worthless and no good, and like to basically unfuck all my major malfunctions. And I feel like that would be very cathartic. Like now I really like 19-year-old me thought, man, this is some bullshit. But like 52-year-old me now says, I would pay good money for that therapy.
Uh-huh. Yep.
That sounds like my drill sergeant.
And Rothman, you hung out with the alphabet people, and sure they tagged you with something.
Yeah, actually, I was Bubba because I was always the science guy. So Booger isn't too far from my actual nickname from way back when. So.
How would they arrive at Bubba for science? I'm not.
It's kind of the opposite. Yeah, well, it's like Bubba. It's kind of like a Southern stupid name. But here's the smart guy. So
like if you're a klutz, they call you Ace.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, so it wasn't a good thing they called me PT Stud? Now you're telling me?
Neither was it when they called you Sex Machine.
God dang it. You just ruined my whole 8 years.
I'm sure that's not what it did it.
I was such a good corporal, they made me one 3 times.
It is weird when you look back 20 or 30 years later and you realize, like, now that you have maturity, you can see something that you're a part of, and you're like, oh, that wasn't what I thought it was at the time.
So when we did our call signs, we actually gave ourselves Hollywood call signs, and I had the entire time I was there, we didn't know one of the junior privates was going by a slang word for male reproductive liquids.
Oh God!
And I heard it later, and I'm like, wait, that's what that means?
Yeah.
So he had
How much do you want to bet that most of Navy pilot training is just like you probably so you go into the Navy and they go through your flight school and you're probably for 9 months just hovering over oh, I hope I get a good call sign. You're just waiting to have your you're probably I don't know if I'm gonna stay in or re-enlist until I find out my call sign.
Right.
That's probably how they are.
We had the guy for our platoon sergeant that was before he was a dad, he had dad jokes. So at one point, we're trying to all platoons had to come up with their own call sign because we were being pushed out. We were not going to operate as a company. We were going to operate independently as platoons. So he decides because he doesn't know what it is, because he's hunky white dude, and he's like, yeah, we're gonna call ourselves the Shockers, and we're like, what? And he's like, yeah, we're gonna call ourselves the Shockers. You know, like that movie, the horror movie. I'm like, that's not how people are gonna take this. So later on, we're in the middle of the deployment.
Well, that tells me what year this was.
We're in the middle of the deployment, and we have to go into this area where the call sign for the command operations cell is Dragon. And I'm looking at the Blue Force tracker, and I find the call sign that we got to call into, and I'm like, "You've got to be kidding me!" And all of a sudden, my boss says, "What is it?" And I'm like, "Look at this call sign," and he goes, "Oh, we are going to have so fun." So I said, "Look, he called us Shocker, but if we say this over the radio, he's going to kick our ass." He was like, "No, I'm doing it." So now imagine the most Irish cop you've ever met, from Bourne, Massachusetts. That was my boss in Iraq. He sits there. He goes, now it's Dragon COC we're supposed to be calling into. He goes, Dragon cock. This is Shocker requesting passage of lines over. We're like, what? He's like, can we insert into your area? We're like, giant laughing.
Well, with that, I guess I can tell you the most common nickname for me was Handley became handy, and sometimes it was self-love is what they called me.
Yeah.
Oh,
So speaking of self-love, how did we do today? What was the 3 things we did right and 3 things we did wrong?
Segue.
I think we did great because we allowed James to run amok as
Oh my
usual.
God.
Okay,
And
war
just,
crimes.
oh yeah.
No, he
Yeah,
just would have got
totally.
shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he would like his own people would kill him, like and just
Yeah.
total chaos. But like he's having the time of his life, so who cares?
Yeah. Bull in the
Um,
China shop, but that was okay.
yeah, he seems to want to work counterproductive to anything that you're doing for some reason. I don't understand it,
No,
but it's
I don't
fun too.
want.
He
I don't
plays,
want this special
yeah,
ability.
yeah. But then like since we're playing military guys with rank, it's kind of funny. Like I would order him to do things as the captain, and he would play the role. He'd be like, okay. I think he's actually kind of embracing the crusty master sergeant role, um, having only understood crusty master sergeants from having watched like F Troop or like cavalry movies from the West, and so
Yeah.
like that's kind of the fun part. But I think it was kind of our first dungeon crawl. So yeah, see Baldur like the Hound of Ill Omen liked that. So that was really fun, and we wailed on some goblins. I tried to organize a raid with a sort of like a supporting force and an assault force, but James kind of like shot that down. But it didn't matter. We did great anyways.
Yeah.
And then we penetrated the cavern. We penetrated the goblins. The
You
goblin
inserted
cavity.
into that
We inserted
cavern,
into the goblin cavity, and we got a big rock like a meteor rock. And I found some magic dice, and we threw some flaming Molotov cocktails, and we found an M240. Jr. We found a 240
Nice, nice.
with a
I
couple
played with one of
within
those.
the end a couple of belts of ammo, so we're good to go.
All right, all right.
Yeah, it was like, oh shit, they get stuff too. So
Yeah. I was like,
yeah,
oh,
but
I
we
wasn't
found
expecting that.
yeah, and it was a former ranger gone bad who turned into a dwarf. The ruin revealed that he was we encountered a local denizen type race, that we were hip to called the voodoo dwarves. So
So was this
the
guy totally dwarf, or did he like it was like kind of like semi-changed? I mean, I didn't get the idea that he was like total dwarf,
He
or was
was
he?
he was a full-on 100%
Oh, all
dwarf.
right,
The ruin had
okay,
changed him.
all right,
And from what the guy who's helping you had said before, these rangers came along 20 or 30 years
right,
before you guys got there.
right.
So that's 4. Okay.
What's that?
I'm keeping track of the number of parties we know about that came through.
Well, you know there were a host of them that came through.
But only 4 of them now have been named.
Well, you got the
Well, yeah, because there's 2 in Forgotten Ruin, the first book.
yes, but your characters don't know about those 2.
True.
Yeah. But there's 3 in Forgotten Red.
I just assumed those 2 were the same group. Okay.
No, well, so there's a group of SEALs that came through.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Rangers that came through, and then what we find out later in Forgotten Ruin is that there was a special forces team that came through about 8,000 years prior.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. I did read that. You're right.
Yeah, and we pitched this publisher today, basically their own standalone series called what did Jason call it? Jason, a really awesome name for it. It's not Kings of the Ruin.
Was it self-love?
It was not self-love.
Self-love. I'll think of it. This is only my 3rd podcast today.
me too.
Yeah, exactly. You say, you're after a while, you're like, where am I? What am I doing? And 2 business calls with Jason. So
Oh goodness.
it's just been nonstop talk.
Right. What's on the dock for tomorrow to abandon nonstop talking? Are you going to the range? Did you happen to find ammo?
I have lots of ammo. So I have my junk ammo that I can burn for my Glock 17 and the M1. And I do need some range time because my Glock 17's my sidearm skills frankly suck. Like I've been doing corrective exercises working with you actually, well, to get my aim better and things like that. Like it used to be a lot better, but something has gotten into my muscle memory that's making me fling rounds to the left when I shouldn't.
What's your
Um,
carry weapon?
oh, are we talking about real life?
Yeah, yeah, real life.
It's a Glock 17, and
Okay.
then I also have a backup Walther P22. Who
Okay.
cares, FBI?
Yeah.
But then with my M4 and my M1, like I can't miss.
The M1 is tight.
I'm not that great with a pistol either. I had a range instructor once told me I'd have better luck throwing the pistol at them than hitting them with it while shooting. He's like, stick to long arms.
Yeah, but keep this in mind. It's a really interesting thing. Like when they break down gunfights and everything like that with sidearms, like you'd be surprised at how little even pros hit. Like in a serious, like let's start shooting at each other situation, um, it's something like 80% of the rounds hit.
See, yeah, that's one of the reasons why, even on my carry weapon or my home defense weapon, both long and pistol, all of them have lasers built in. So even if I'm stumbling drunk or just bleary eyed from waking up to an intruder, um, theoretically, as long as the laser's on, I'm okay. Yeah.
Unfortunately, Mr. Alphabet, guys, he lost in a tragic boating accident, so
Exactly.
no violence.
Yeah. My
Yeah.
crimson traces are Val disappeared, and I don't know where any of
I
that
think the
was.
thing actually that revolution, and I used to think lasers were great and everything like that, but like I was actually spending some time with Doc Spears and Chris Seislove, who is the master trainer for Blue Force Gear,
Hmm?
and they basically said you've got to put a weapon light on
Oh
because
yeah.
the weapon light makes all the difference in the world because you can now see and I used to be the guy it was like, oh, I'll put night sights on, and night sights they suck, like glow in the dark sight, they're like as Chris Love explained to me, he's like, these are great to find your weapon in the dark, like when you're laying
Yeah.
there. But like once you have a weapon light on and you flick that on and the person will not be blind, like that is not like they will be blinded in my opinion. But Doc Spears yells at me when I say this. But it doesn't matter. What the weapon light is there is to show you the target you're shooting at, and then that
Yeah.
makes all the difference. But the laser fine, but the laser in the dark and stuff like that. I don't know. I would like I'm gonna buy a Glock like a 19 long slide, and I'm gonna put a laser on it. But I think it's probably better just to have a weapon light.
Yeah.
What
Well,
your
let's
thoughts?
put it this way: the logic behind the laser, from my point of view, is simply, you know, you're not trying to aim, for a limb or anything else. You're just trying to get center mass, and if you're at an odd angle, you don't want to expose yourself, and you're at home. Uh, Hopefully, you can see your target, but if you're at an odd angle that you're gonna do one of these, you can still aim and reliably get barrel aiming in the right direction, where otherwise it might be awkward. So it's not the ideal shooting stance. Is what you know. What's the worst case scenario? You can't open up for an easy shooting stance, to aim. So if you're at an awkward aiming position, laser is going to help you a lot more than any light's going to help you. In getting the bullet to the target.
And speaking of awkward shooting position, James Ward running into those various caverns and tunnels today by himself.
Yeah.
Yes,
I,
yes.
I was kind of tempted to have his troops have a Vietnam moment and be like, yeah, he ran into the line of fire. I don't know what happened.
He is chaos, he plays like I got Yaxian, like he wouldn't cross the bridge. He wants to, like, even in his own play style, he wants to be he wants to turn everything into a big investigative production, because I think what we're looking at is somebody who became so gun shy because of Gary. Like, like nothing can be trusted. Everything has to be tested, and so that was kind of fun to watch. But yeah, he's definitely cruising to get fragged for sure.
Have you seen what was it, that movie Revenge? Was it Revenge of the Nerds, where they like offed that the ROTC guy?
Yes, yes, I have.
I think that was the movie where they did that.
It's been a long time. Was it that one?
I just remember it's the scene.
Nerds, or is it Animal House? Where they
Animal House, yeah,
Animal House.
They hit him with the golf ball. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
That's gonna be the Master Sergeant.
And that guy shows up years later in Twisted Sisters, like first big video.
Does he
Can't
know?
take it. Yeah, and he's like the dad, and he's like screaming, and
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Deep torments him. Yeah, I used to confuse him and James Woods a lot, but James Woods is different.
It's odd tangent, but speaking of Twisted Sister, I've actually watched an interview of Dee Snider, the lead singer. He's like a Christian fundamentalist, very conservative guy. I was like, wow. I was listening to him, an interview of him, and I'm like, I would not have pictured the big hair, makeup, weird guy, conservative guy. I was like,
Alice Cooper, same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, we did that, and I think the exciting thing is the world building that you're bringing in, Walt. Like,
oh, thank you.
We're getting to and showing the audience the interactive map. That was cool, but it's definitely building to we're getting closer to the Rangers. We know that after that, there's going to be kind of like a reset where we're going to drop some time, and then we're going to become our characters. Become our D&D characters, and it seems like we're going to be sent back to an area or something to have a mission. So I think playing as these sort of fish out of water characters with modern weapons, but in a fantasy setting, that makes it really fun. I like the interaction of. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I actually like how you're sneaking in things. It's not like all in one shot. We go from modern to fantasy. It's kind of like that leader who's like, "What's the story there? The runes, the dwarf, the conversion." We're getting all sorts of. Let's assume we know nothing about the story. We're getting hints of weird things are going to happen above and beyond our rune healer type guy. So it's actually leading nicely towards evolving the story into something that might naturally feel like we're slowly converting into. It's not a sudden thing. And I actually like a lot how you did the logistics of showing the map and stuff like that. I think that was really effective. I think that gave good visuals of where people are, where the bad guys are. That worked really well in my opinion.
Yeah.
Just remember, Nick, as you write, if you kill Kennedy, I will find you.
All I can hear is kill Kennedy.
It's funny that you say that, JR, because Captain Kilgosha in the chat is saying, I hope JR uses a sword only and then gets killed shouting Leroy Jenkins.
I have to wonder about Captain Kilgosha because he seems so homicidal. But what if he's like a serial killer, and this is how he plays with his victims? Once when he shows up in your room with duct tape and a rape kit, he's like, I've been telling you all along, I want you dead. Did you not understand? And you're like, oh my gosh.
Well, I happen to know who he is, so what I can't tell you as a Canadian, he will apologize before he kills me, and then again to my corpse.
There's nothing like hearing, hey, I'm sorry, dude, as the duct tape rips open.
It's funny, too, because Sparky6868 in the chat just said, Rip Kennedy. Sorry, JR.
Bastards!
No, I think this is a fun riff on Forgotten Ruin, as in, if you read, and I know Sparky's read Forgotten Ruin because I think he just texted, we just communicated online, he really liked it. But this is a lot of the stuff that's in the book, and the revealing stuff and the modern military unit as sort of fishes out of water, like having to like figure out, okay, what's all this fantasy stuff mean for the Air Force? I mean, we're all kind of loopy doopy, like, and we've had a lot of recliner time getting to watch Netflix. So we maybe are not struggling as much as the Rangers in the book Forgotten Ruin. Like, we're kind of like, well, and of course we know we're playing D&D, but the Rangers in Forgotten Ruin in the first book, there's moments where like they kind of all struggled to embrace like what's happening, and it's like most defined in like like and you used today the Hunter's Fellowship, but like when she does that in the book to the scouts, and the scout sergeant team leader, his name's Sergeant Hart with a T, but of course everybody calls him Sergeant Hard, because he's that guy. He's just he's gonna outranger everybody, and so to have like Tinkerbell fairy dust sprinkled on him is physically painful to him. It's just
so basically he's
bullshit.
the opposite of me. I was Kennedy.
you would embrace the fairy dust. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
question, because I haven't read the book.
Nor will you ever.
Ever.
No, I'm just joking.
So do you actually have the main characters as they're evolving? I mean, and walking through. Do they know anything about D&D, or they're just playing their none of it's a game?
So let me fix that first.
Yeah.
And then maybe I actually wouldn't mind Walter Jr. explaining that, because I'd like to actually hear their feedback on it.
Yeah.
But let me get you an audio copy, or do you want an ebook copy?
The audio is amazeballs. Like, they picked the best narrator.
Okay. Yeah. Audio work then.
Okay. I will text you an audio link.
Okay.
And you can listen to it, and then maybe you'll write a Wargate novel. So if either JR or Walt want to explain his question, I will work on texting that link.
Do you want to go, JR, or do you want me to do it?
So repeat the question one more time, and I will answer.
I knew that was coming.
Basically, I wanted to know whether or not the main characters, the Rangers, and the folks we're playing, essentially, do they know anything about D&D or anything? They're just playing a straight up game
sort of
character.
So the main character is called Talker, and he was a linguist who's like super badass, and somehow enlists as a PFC instead of going like straight to specialist with like 12 billion college degrees. And so he's a linguist who was rushed through like a abbreviated ranger school so he could keep up. But he's one of them, but not really. So you can kind of get that everyman perspective, which is generally a lot more fun to read.
Right.
And then they do have one character who's like, that's the Kennedy, who every unit has that one guy that just doesn't quite fit in, isn't quite good enough, that everybody secretly wants to like, blanket party out of the army. And that's him. I kind of feel like the average person being blanket party out of a ranger unit would probably do okay in a regular light infantry unit.
So here's the deal, right? So Talker was a specialist that was a linguist specialist, and the thing that most people don't realize is that a ranger unit just isn't composed of just infantry guys. There's tons of different specialties that go into a ranger unit, because they might need a Swiss Army approach to certain things that they do. So when you meet Talker, you have to understand that this is one of these specialists, but even though he feels like he doesn't fit in, when you get to a ranger unit and they see you as a subject matter expert on something that they themselves are not subject matter experts on, you are suddenly a prized possession to be protected, and then nurtured, and then turned into a hardened, stone-cold killer. So Talker has been kind of keeps being tossed into situations where he has to work with these real hardcore guys, the true believers in the scroll life, to kind of bring him to that next level, not as a guy who's going to be kicking down doors, but as a guy who, if we need him to do some damage, he can do some damage, right? So that's like Talker's deal, because the thing is, everybody who's there participating in that unit, with the exception of certain personnel, and I won't spoil why, people don't realize a lot of times that you can't just walk into a ranger unit and you don't get picked
Yeah.
to be in a ranger unit. You have to go through a selection process. These days it's called RASP, right, which is the Ranger Assessment and Selection Program. Back when I went through, it was jokingly called RIP, right, which is the Ranger Indoctrination process, or Ranger Indoctrination pipeline, depending on what time you were there. But everybody said, they put RIP on your headstone because you wouldn't make it through, you're going to fail, blah blah blah, right? So everybody that's a part of this story already has already beaten out 80 to 90% of the army to be there.
Right.
Right. So, but Talker feels like a fish out of water because he sees these guys, like the guy he was talking about, Sergeant Hart. He sees these guys as like combat gods because a lot of times in the beginning sections of the book, he doesn't have a lot to do because there's nobody for him to talk to.
Right.
But then you get Kennedy. Now, Kennedy is one of those anomalies that you get in a Ranger unit that's part of the Rangers themselves. But he's got like a brain on another level, blah blah blah. And to fit in when he was before his time as a Ranger, he played D&D, and that's what Kennedy's deal is. So like these guys are all like in it to win it, blah blah blah, when they hit the ground, and all of a sudden shit goes sideways because all of a sudden the Lord of the Rings start knocking and they're not happy that they're there. Right? So what ends up happening is they turn to this kid who used to play D&D pretty heavily.
Yeah.
And he starts informing their combat tactics because it's like, all right, well, these are orcs that we're dealing with, and they usually, do this, and that's probably a troll. We need something to burn that son of a bitch because blah blah blah.
Okay.
So it's not that it's not a lit RPG by any stretch of the
Right.
imagination.
Right.
Instead, it's something much worse. It's somebody took reality.
Yeah.
And some of these things from this fantasy game are actually, happened. And there's reasons for that and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But, I mean, it's a very well done story. The Rangers in it are believable and personable, even if you don't like them for whatever reason, like Kurtz and Hart. But then everybody's everybody's fan favorite in there. Because he's the guy that went native religion on people.
In the beard. I'm just jealous I didn't think of that when I was in.
So he wanted to believe in a certain, there's a certain way that some of these JSOC, the SOCOM guys, MARSOC guys, when we have a loss in our community, a common expression is till Valhalla. Right, and there's one guy in the unit that takes that to like the nth degree, and just like, but you just like in any military unit, a military unit is a microcosm of society. You're going to have your exceed and excel types. You're going to have your laid back types, and then you're going to have your downright bastards. So, and that's really what is exemplary about this book is that you get that microcosm, but at the same time, it's set along the backdrop of, Tolkien. The only thing is orcs and whatever. Everybody's tough till you're staring down the business end of a 240 Bravo.
Right.
And it's really well done. Really well.
All right. So and basically these, the soldiers are treating this El Bizarro token, come to life stuff as like, okay, just a different kind of mission, weird ass shit that's coming at me. At
some point, but the thing is, it doesn't start to hit them until like the sun comes up periodically because in the beginning it's just crazy assholes with big butcher knives coming at them across a river, even though they're laying them down like chess pieces on a board. It isn't until like a kind of special mission shows itself.
Right.
That they're like, oh shit, we have a problem here, and this is what's really going on. And the thing about the book is that you have this reason why things are kind of sideways in this area where they land, and for some people, at the end of the book, everything is the same. They were, except for the battles that take place. they started as a human being, they finished as a human being, and they have to deal with the losses, stressors, and implications of combat. But some guys, like right when they landed, started to change. Other guys, the change might come later, and it really depends on the individual. Like one guy, and it seems to, and this is my own personal opinion on the story, kind of like my own head cheese about it. I think the more severe you are in your in your whatever it is, because like one of the guys takes to magic like that, right? And needs almost no training to affect it, right? So I think that based on what I've read of the book, and I've read the book 3 times so far, it seems to me the more severe you are, the faster the ruin latches its teeth onto you and wants to strip you out of that old life to suit you into this one. So that's my
Kennedy starts off the novel. There's always a guy in any kind of military unit, battalion, or whatever, who has become like the sergeant major's personal pet project to either wash out or whatever. And so there, like, if you ever read Catch-22, there was a character, I can't remember the name of him, but he was the guy who was always like digging a latrine ditch, but he was kind of the Greek chorus of what was going on.
Sorry.
Yeah, and so that's like all the Rangers are like, fortifying their positions. They know this big orc force is coming at them from drones, but they just see him as like, well, what are these Hadjis all about? We know we've gone forward in the future. Maybe these are Morlocks. Maybe this is against humanity. But Kennedy, from the bottom of the latrine slit, is saying they're orcs. Like, he's telling them what he thinks it is, but he's only telling like the lower enlisted come by to either like commiserate with him or like laugh at him, like none of the command. And so Kennedy's like observations are moving. Information always moves vertically, and so like the command staff is like, no, they're not orcs. Like, this is stupid. But the more things that he says, the more it becomes confirmed. Like, he kind of knows what's going on. And then like the fun moments are when people come to the command section and they're like, well, Kennedy says they're wraiths. And like they have to be like, but he is he's the guy we're trying to kick out of the Ranger battalion. Like there's a reason he's on extra duty all the time. But as time progresses and the things that he does, and he's just a minor character. He's not a major character. He's a minor character.
You take that back.
You take your dirty whore mouth words back.
Oh my God.
But he's a character that I think, like, everybody in that book is somebody that I knew or is archetype of. I served with Rangers. I served with regular, not was a Ranger or anything like that, but I was around Rangers. So I have a certain outside opinion of what they are like, and I think that's captured. There's a couple of different types of Rangers, but generally there's all selected in a certain way. They're not like regular infantry, and they're not like regular, like a lot of other people. But I also knew a lot of officers too. So the officers are in there, the sergeant majors are in there. The different you always have the guy like Tanner who is another type of Greek chorus, which is the guy who's really good and everybody likes, but he's the guy that's always getting DUIs,
and ex-wives,
and stripper ex-wives and stuff like that, And then you have a special forces operator in there who, we won't spoil it for you, but like, he's changing and he doesn't even know it. But Walt's absolutely right. Like, the more specific you are, the more you're likely to become what you're going to become. There's someone in there that basically is a were berserker, and that only comes out in a very extreme, stressful moment. And there's other things going on too. One of the people that was kind of helping me, this Ranger captain, the guy who ran that outpost that you used to go out to, JR.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And he said,
I still have nightmares about Route Irish.
Yeah, and he was like 4% of this force should be changing. He was saying like he'd figured it out kind of. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting number. So, like that should be happening. But if you have been in the military, you probably recognize all of these people.
Right.
And that's I think like that's what I do in all my military writing through Galaxy's Edge or Strange Company. Like those are people that because they really do exist. Like those are really the people, and they're like you do get the true believers. Like it maybe not necessarily. I shouldn't say this. It's not necessarily specific to Ranger units. Like you get true believers in line infantry. Like the guys that but those are the guys that are usually in the S1 filling out a 41A7 for course selection and things like that.
Right.
They're using the infantry to get there, but you would also get that kind of guy as as the E7 running the S1. That just people who embrace. I mean, that was back in my day. People who embrace professionalism. And then you get deadbeat shitty lieutenant. Who was running the medics section, who came out of West Point and just wanted nothing to do but get out of the army. Like, wow, that's weird. So I don't think that's actually a character that's in there like that, and you couldn't write about Rangers and ever have someone who didn't want to be there. That's the one thing that's not in that book, because that's the difference between Rangers and everybody else. Like all the Rangers want to be there on, the people who would go on this mission would be there, are the kind that would want to be there. Now, the command staff or the command element might not want them there, like Kennedy.
Right.
But no one there, like someone said to me, like there's a scene in there where they're all kind of given the briefing about what they're going to do, and I wrote it as like it was an option. And he's like, that's not part of this community. There's no like, do you want to do this? You wouldn't be there if you were a person that needed to be asked if you wanted to do that. The motivation is so much higher than like regular military units,
and that's because you gotta fight for the position. Because
right.
I don't know how it is nowadays. When I enlisted, you had to have a certain GT score, general testing score, to be considered for Ranger training. Then, if you managed to get it in your contract, because they only allowed a certain percentage per year to get it in their contract, you would go through the pipeline for one station training, and you're basically going to be training for 6 to 8 months before you even get a vacation or a time off or whatever in a training environment, which sucks. But on top of that, right, you have, when you go to specialized schooling, like you got to go to airborne school before you go to selection. So you go to airborne school, and let's say they have a backlog of students. So now you got to wait 2 weeks for that, where you're cleaning latrines, and you're not even, you've built yourself up in this mind as this 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid, however it is you go in, and you're going to get in there and you're going to get after it immediately. And now you have to keep that motivation up through scrubbing floors, through mowing grass, just to get into the school before you get into the school where you might graduate to get into a Ranger unit. You haven't even been considered. Ranger school is still way off. And then you get there, and once you get through all this training, you get through your at the time, RIP was 3 weeks when I went through. You get through that 3 weeks of training. Hopefully everything goes well. You don't get hurt. We had a helmet fell on his knee from, it wasn't properly strapped on, and his knee was shattered. So, that kid was immediately out. You name it, anything can go wrong. So
these kids make videos while waiting in processing for RAS.
Yeah.
On how to get through RAS.
Yep.
It's like, and I think the Rangers of Walt and my day were they were very high performance. Like the Rangers now are trained to pro athlete levels the point that they have their own private gyms. They use enhanced body training well beyond anything that you would think would be part of the military experience. I'm talking pro athlete levels.
Stuff you see in the
just
NFL.
Infer. I'm not going to say what it is because I don't say it, but just infer from that. That's what they do.
Yeah.
And they have their own private gyms. They have trainers in there specifically for specific muscle groups. They have, like, if you hurt yourself in training, there's 3 or 4 therapists to go after you immediately to get you corrected for this sort of pro level. But let me tell you the most insane ranger story about how badly someone wanted to be in a ranger unit I've ever heard in my life. So I went to OCS for a year, graduated, got my commission. So I know what it means to be an officer, as in like what you have to do to get that. There's a guy who was a ranger company commander and did his hitch as a ranger company commander, and then turned around, resigned his commission, enlisted because he just wanted to be a weapons team sergeant in a ranger unit. It was like the hype. He no longer wanted to be an officer. He just realized because he knew, like, once he completed that, he was going to be rotated out. He was going to become a staff officer. Never, none of that. So what he said is, fuck my commission. I want to be a team sergeant. That's insane as an officer.
Yeah.
Nick, when you were doing your line unit stuff, you missed the one type of guy in an infantry line unit that's just regular. It's the one who's always saying, "But did you see what my ASVAB score was? Like, I shouldn't be here."
Yeah.
The guy everyone wants to stick a sock in.
Yeah, exactly. And also my favorite guy in the unit is Escobar the armor, who the last I ever heard of that guy, he pulled out this one guy's AMT long slide, which that guy, was his coveted gun. And the last I ever heard of him was in the Tacoma newspaper when he caught his ex-wife or his wife cheating on him. And he went to kill her with this dude's gun from the armory, because you used to be able to keep your, I don't know how it is now, but you could keep if you live in the barracks, you could keep your weapons in the armory. And he went and took this guy's gun, and the last thing he was quoted, we ever saw him again in the paper, was, "I hope you can run faster than I can shoot, bitch."
Did you see what I wrote in the chat, Walt? I'm going to give you a heretical heart attack.
Are you talking about my scrolls?
My scroll said Meal Team 6 with the green bean coffee rocker.
Yeah, but that, I mean,
so but the element, like Rothman, it's whether it's Rangers, like, and I think, like, if you were to write something, you had a specific experience encounter with the military. Mm-hmm. It's not just Rangers. It's like the concept of what Wargate is it's modern military unit in fantasy setting,
right.
with a perpetual taco machine, and at that point you can play and have fun and come up with anything. Right. I just chose to use something that I have a lot of respect for and some knowledge of, and then relate that. But I think you could do anything. But it's all military units in a certain way, even levels of high degree of motivation or whatever. Just like all adventuring parties, to blunt force segue back to DnD, are kind of all the same in a certain way. There's flavors, but thief gonna thief, ranger gonna ranger.
Hell yeah! What's his name? The Italian guy in Soprano. Yeah, he definitely needs to be a thief.
Can you do the voice, Walt?
Well, he has 2 voices. Yeah. He has his voice that he's goofing off with everybody, which is Mario.
Yeah,
it's me, Mario. But then if you listen to the book, when the narrator does his actual Siciliano voice, it's kind of like Walt. He's kind of like Andy Garcia in Untouchables.
Yeah, I was dying in the scene in Forgotten Ruin when he's doing his thing, and he, I don't want to spoil it because it's just he's like, I got this, he's okay. Oh my god.
I know which line JR likes.
My favorite was actually when you showed them the what was it, the gnome or the troll or whatever that tried the Coke. And it's a moon juice.
It's the goblin.
It's the goblin. Yeah,
goblin.
Jabba, like moon motion. Yeah.
Hey, I had some Jar Jar Binks flashbacks with the accent, but it was good. It was good.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, the narrator, and you're spot on about him, JR. Like, he's awesome. Like, at first everybody was a little too Texan for me, and that's not really the way Rangers speak. Like, they actually speak a little more direct and in my experience, a little more direct and a little more crisply. But I like his Southern. And here was a feature we discovered. His voice expands the hours of the recording, which you want as an author. It makes the book longer. But like we had him pegged at 17 hours. He came in at 20 hours because he speaks slower.
Maybe he thought they were Texas Rangers and not Army Rangers, and he got a little confused.
You have to be super careful with narrators because they make dumb mistakes like that. In fact, he makes a couple of mistakes in that audiobook that are just like make me cringe.
So what did you think was going to be my favorite scene then, Nick?
I took an arrow to the knee.
Oh, I love that one too. That was number 2. I took an arrow to the knee. I was laughing. I was dying. It's like my Skyrim is being recognized as RPG. And Walt's probably cringing.
A little bit.
No, it's a lot of fun, and we were hoping it. I mean, hey, the initial feedback is good. We'll know next Saturday how it is, and like this was a big thing for Jason and I because we funded the production on our own because we believed in it, and we see sort of cancel culture and what they're doing. So like anybody listening right now, like we know we beat this horse to death, but you actually could go over to the Galactic Outlaws website right now and buy direct from us and strike a blow at cancel culture and keep it for yourself. And the audiobook will be out from us, and you can buy that on Audible next Saturday. Not this Saturday, but next Saturday. And Rothman, I just sent you the link for you to listen to.
I got that.
So Captain Kilgosha in the chat wants to know, is there a scene where the Rangers find the sirens who try to seduce them? Those are Dependas. They are hopefully not in the Forgotten Ruin.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I don't know. I
Talker
think,
wants a certain one.
Yeah, Talker, like JR is to so Talker is to Last of Autumn. But there was like Walt's kind of reading. Well, Walt is reading right now, book 2, and
do you have more?
There is a mention. No, I need to write that tomorrow.
Okay.
I need to work.
He's
on
reading
that
a couple
tomorrow.
book twos.
But there, I don't know if you got the mention though. Like, there's more Shadow Elf women that came out of the work. Like they were hiding. Like we thought it was just Last of Autumn. So I think there's going to be some Ranger Shadow Elf loving going on. But the funny thing too is like there's a line where it's like Tucker wonders like, what if there's only female orcs? And he's all, spoiler, that wouldn't stop the Rangers.
Yeah. Yep, it's true.
It's true. Any old port in a storm.
Oh my God!
We actually go ahead.
I was gonna say one of my bosses I worked for, one of the last guys who had received an on-site commission. So he was an enlisted guy, and they commissioned him to a lieutenant when all the officers in his section during Vietnam were killed.
Last war they did that too.
Yeah, and eventually he came home and went through OCS because he had college and stuff. But But yeah, he was just a really awesome dude. But anytime we went anywhere, his wife was like, "You're going, right?" I said, "Well, yeah, I have to. I'm on a security detail." She's like, "Okay, good, because you know how he gets." And I'm like, "I don't." We get to Panama, and it was like, you see these 4 girls get off the elevator. One of them was wearing, the only thing she was wearing like a dress is a black T-shirt with the Ranger tab across the front of it. And we're like, oh, what planet did you come off of? And he's just like, hey. I'm like, no, sir, you have a meeting this way. You need to stay away from those. He's like, yeah, but, local relations. You can locally relate later when you're on the phone to your wife. He was like, you suck at this. Yeah.
And they're still married today.
That I don't know.
So yeah, JR, how's your love life going?
Just fine, thank you.
I almost said something.
We actually, so when we were doing convoy transfers in Iraq, a lot of times, if it's sensitive items, we just bring someone from the unit we were transporting their stuff from, because it was easier than transferring everything over every which way, especially if it was other services. So we did a couple resupplies where we were escorting Ranger equipment, so we had Rangers with us, and they would get like a hard-on in the middle. Like, I remember we were in the middle of a firefight, and the guy just yanks our gunner down and climbs in. He's like, I got this. I'm like, fuck, dude.
Yep.
We don't get a lot of fun time. Come on, let us have our moment.
It's kind of their job.
No, he did not let us have our moment.
Let me buy you a pack of gum and show you how to chew it.
That sounds about like that guy.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how the pros are. They're just convinced that they're the only ones that can do it.
And he was a corporal and told me to just shut up and drive when I was a sergeant sitting there as a security team leader. He's like, "Shut up and drive, Sarge." I'm like, okay.
Well, that's how guys in sort of like once you get to the 82nd, that culture comes in and they don't care. So like Doc Spears was telling me, like when he was at the 82nd, he went into the PX one time. He went into the PX one time, and there were these two guys from the 82nd Maroon Berets like walking in, and they passed this NCO who was clearly, not 82nd, but he was wearing jump boots. So this was early 80s, and this was like a thing. You can imagine this. This would not happen now. Especially because the NCO was ethnic. And so they threw him down. They were riggers. He completed rigger school. So they threw him down, pulled out their little rigger tools, cut his boots off, and threw him in the trash and called him a nasty leg. He was an E6. And they were like specialists.
All I'm saying is leg lives matter, all right?
Yeah. So like once you get to that culture, like with the guys who really buy into it, no, they're there for that reason. They're selected for that reason. And so yeah, that guy would, as a corporal, tell you to shut up. You could pursue it. You could stand him in front of a general and all that kind of stuff, but you would be ultimately the loser.
Yeah,
well, that was the mission. I got Article 15 for reckless driving in a combat zone.
That's an officer who's bored.
I was aggressively pursuing the ambush by driving at it, and that was reckless. There could have been a minefield.
You're in danger of harming the ambush.
Yeah. So I had bigger things to worry about than a corporal that told me to shut up.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, what do you think will happen when the next time you guys are on an ambush in a game, and Benny, the master sergeant,
Captain Ward goes,
starts charging in.
I mean, he might accidentally take some friendly fire to the rear. Oops.
I think he's cruising to get in over his head. He only survived today because he's got the 4 daggers.
Yeah.
So what happens when those guys? Yeah, and they only have so much ammo. Now, he found himself at 240 today, but if he doesn't know how to employ a 240, he'll burn through that ammo fast, and and things like that. So, he's going to get in over his head, and it'll be interesting, but.
And that's the thing
he's
too.
definitely making some character choices, like we were talking, like
Berserker.
ear cutting and Berserker, barbarian.
But and that's the thing too. You guys found that that dwarf was using a 240 and had ammo for it. That based on when you picked up all the links and spent brass and stuff like that, some of those links were chewed through. So he's recycling the links, which you can't do forever. You can maybe do that once, twice.
You're going to get jams.
Yeah, things are going to start jamming. So, there's actually a mechanic.
And you never said there was a spare barrel. Either.
There is no spare barrel. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, then you can only piss on it so many times when it's glowing.
Yeah. So here's a question. So what would be the game mechanics with regards to? I mean, normally when you're swinging a sword, one shot, one roll, you hit or you miss. Now, if you're obviously using an automatic weapon, theoretically you're spewing out, let's say, 3-round burst, 10-round burst, whatever. How does that affect your rolls? And I mean, how do you treat that as a DM?
They like I said, a lot of what you're seeing now, because you guys are coming from the modern world into the D&D setting, you guys are seeing rules that I've taken from Pete Spawn's World War II book, which is called Operation White Box. Right. It was White Box D&D with an overlay of World War II combatives, and then myself and some of my friends over at Fan and Goat Games, we did a modern adaptation of that, and the first character group that we did was the Rangers. So it allowed me to create the characters that you guys are using. There's 3 types of automatic fire in Operation White Box. There's suppressive fire, there's automatic weapons fire, and then there's debilitative fire for vehicles.
What about spray and pray?
Well, that you can do with anything. No,
I mean, does it have its separate category, or would you throw that into suppressive?
It's not automatic weapon, and it's not. It's a totally separate category. So, according to the rules, a lot of that acts like a breath weapon, which is why you get a saving throw, right?
Okay.
But what's happening is every time you guys now you've been really lucky. Now, what's happening is there's an ammo mechanic in the game, right? So every time now, the only one who's really been going and telling me, "Hey, I'm blowing through a magazine," is Nick.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's just like, I'm emptying a magazine on this
That's
dude.
me.
Yeah.
But did you strike a heroic pose?
So
Right.
that becomes a breath weapon attack at that point.
Right.
Of course, I'm an Air Force officer.
Yeah.
But what happens is the automatic weapons that are actually geared toward that you can pull. Now, if he's doing a mag dump on a guy, right? There's a mechanic for that, but there's also mechanics for weapon failure and ammo failure. So basically, you run out. Now he's telling me automatically, like, "Hey, I'm dumping the gun."
Yeah.
Right. Now, you guys, I've been rolling for you guys because I'm not making you keep track of rounds.
Right.
Right. But what's happening is I'm making a roll, and every time you guys use your weapons, I make a roll. If it hits this certain number, that magazine's done.
Right.
Right. So eventually, you guys are going to run out of rounds.
Do you factor in? So, like, I remember a couple firefights where Mama, she seized up, and you're manually charging every round to get that out there. Is there a factor for that into the game mechanic?
Yes. Yep.
And then there is a quote from Sparky that I want you to read.
So,
and he wants you.
Story time. My girlfriend, who's ex-army and a D&D gamer, also has a deep-seated yet hilarious hatred for Steven Seagal. Okay. So when I read about Forgotten Ruin as an RPG, I just knew we'd have to play it, and I'd have to base a character off his seal in Under Siege. Why would you do that? Just want to see how fast she tries and frags him. I quote her, "I will stab him in the throat with a stiletto heel. Should be entertaining." If you let your girlfriend play the CIA officer attached to a mission, she might have the stiletto heels with which to stab Steven Seagal the SEAL. And in the Forgotten Ruin book, which you should absolutely go to galaxiesedge.us or forgottenruin.com so that you can order that right now. Captain Kogosh is saying, film that game session so we can post it on YouTube. Absolutely. So if you pick up the book, there is the Rangers in the book actually encounter somebody from the SEAL mission. So I don't know if it's Steven Seagal.
As a martial artist, I just want you to know I study his kung fu.
You studied Aikido?
Aikido.
I don't know. I was just joking around because it looks fake. I don't know if it is or not.
He's actually the real thing.
Yeah.
Aikido.
Okay. Yeah. I was just trying to be funny, but yeah.
I'd like to add, having seen pictures recently, he was the real thing.
He was the real thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
so now you're saying I have a chance.
He was the
now.
real thing.
He
wears muumuus now.
Yeah, he's turned a little puffy lately.
So I have a chance, is what you're saying.
Well, I love those.
You could take, yeah.
I love the videos where the guy who does Aikido tries to take on a professional boxer.
Yeah.
Because it never turns out like the Aikido guy thinks it's going to. So that's always a thing. There's a reason a lot of us don't wear
Nicole and Steven Seagal.
What's that?
Yeah, Nicole and Steven Seagal have this. Nicole and Steven Seagal have the same birthday.
They have a what? I'm sorry, you broke up.
Same birthday.
Oh, the same birthday.
Here, let me.
Okay.
Yeah, let me reload here. Maybe that's the problem. Do I have lag?
No.
You're sounding good now.
You're good. Yeah, you broke up there for a second.
Yes. Oh, Nicole and Steven Seagal have the same birthday.
Oh.
They're birthday buddies.
Do they?
Me and Ted Danson have the same birthday.
Do you get to hang out?
No.
Do you want to hang out?
Yeah. I bet you Steven Seagal would be a fun cat to hang out with.
He has
I bet it would be a
Louisiana
trip.
or something.
He would make me wish I still did drugs.
So the only person I know of that I have the same birthday is Donald Trump Jr.'s girlfriend Guilfoyle. That what's her name?
Gavin Newsom's ex-wife.
Yes. We share exactly the same birthday. It's bizarre. That's the only one I know.
Sparky6868 is saying he can't. He doesn't know if he'll be able to film that video. Hey, Sinokin just subscribed to Tier 1. Thanks, bro. Or girl. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sparky6868 is saying he doesn't know if he can film that gig with the game because she'll kill me mid-game while doing an impression of Steven Seagal.
So how many?
I mean, we might pay for that.
Yeah.
So how many position trigger group do we have on our Mark 18?
I'm not going to go into that kind of depth.
Okay, all right.
Doesn't matter. Because at that point you might as well play the first game JR told me he was going to try and run for his kids. Have you ever heard of a game called GURPS?
I've heard of it. Yes.
It stands for the Generic Universal Role Playing System.
Yeah.
And it can be played very bare bones, but most of the time, when you encounter the rule book, they have rules for everything, like weapon jam, clearing weapon jam, you name it. They have something that goes toward it. So, yeah, very complex. So yeah, if you want to start talking a 3-position trigger with custom internals and file down sear and all this other crazy nonsense, you're gonna get a level of complexity that adds to time. And that's the thing that most people don't realize. The more complexity you build into a game, the longer the game takes to play.
Sure. No, I was going to. The only reason I was asking was, do we have a burst mode where we can do the 3-shot or is it?
Yeah, you guys are shooting Mark 18, so you have safe, semi, and 3-round burst.
I'm not familiar with the Mark 18. That wasn't something I used while I was in.
It's an M4 with some kicked up internals.
Okay.
So when I was in Iraq in 05, the M4 were pretty much senior level people, and most of us just got the M16.
Yeah, you got the A2s.
Some of us, there was a few A1s in the armory.
I believe it.
As long as no one had an A3.
We had a Marine. We got saddled with a Marine Corps combat camera, and when he showed up, I was like, "Dear Lord, a musket!" And he was like, "Yeah, don't hate." So he was given an M16A4, and I was just like, "Dear Lord, man!"
That's the one with the Picatinny rails built in.
Yeah, it's got all the rails and stuff like that, but it still had the big long stock at the end. And I'm like, hey.
We had some of those too.
I asked him too. I said, hey, I'll sign for it. You want to trade guns? He was like, why would you want this? I'm like, range, bro, range.
So you guys were all in before, after what? No, before scars and stuff like that. Yeah.
They had them, but you had to be super secret squirrel to get them.
Oh, okay. All right.
So that was when I was because I got out. I had a 10-year break in service.
Okay.
And then my wife
caused a lot
of temporary insanity, and I went back in. But when I went through the first time, you have like a whole weapons orientation thing that you do right when you're getting into RIP or RASP as it's called now. And the biggest kick I got was being able to fire an MP5 SD3. I got to fire, which is
those are fun.
Yeah, silence and suppressed HK 9mm.
Yep.
And that was just a load of fun. But then you start getting into variations and stuff like that. So most of us carried M16A2s when we were working, and then the squad leaders had car 15s, so they were M4s with a fully automatic selection on the selector switch.
Right.
We weren't cool enough for that.
Well, this is back in the 90s, so you weren't even out of high school yet.
Nope.
So, we had those. And before they went to the Carl Gustaf, some of us were still being trained on the 90 millimeter recoilless rifle from World War II.
Oof.
My grandfather fired one of those.
Yep, I fired one of those.
Did you
In
guys
World
have
War II?
AT4s?
No. What's that, Nick?
Did you guys have AT4s?
We did have AT4s.
What did they replace that with? Didn't they just replace that with something?
The AT4.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to the Carl Gustaf because it's reusable, and it's easier to carry. It's easy to teach.
Imagine being early 80s Army, which, like I was trained at the end of that, where they actually told you with a straight face, this law rocket is AT. And you're like, are you kidding?
Yeah, exactly.
Did you even fire a law rocket? Did you ever have one?
Oh yeah, several times. Because what do you call it? Because of their portability, Special Forces have been using them. In fact, there are Marine Corps units that still use the law for asset denial and building entry.
I've never fired one.
I could definitely see that. Yeah, I fired them, and they're fun, but they're like if you had an honest sergeant, he would say like seriously, don't ever point this at a tank.
Yeah, don't shoot it.
It comes down to that.
So have you guys?
You will just get its attention. That's all you're gonna do. Okay.
Did you see that movie In the Army Now in the '90s with Pauly Shore?
Yeah.
Where there's that famous scene where he fires the AT4, but it's idiot-proof soldier. Anybody could fire, and he puts it on his shoulder backwards and blows up his truck.
Yeah.
They were easy to mess those up if you weren't careful. Was that our truck, drill sergeant?
Oh God.
Yeah, Pauly Shore always made me very uncomfortable. I wasn't a big fan of Pauly Shore.
I didn't watch him when I do remember
Rothman,
when MTV.
You're such an anti-Semite.
I know.
I do remember when MTV played music videos, but I wasn't old enough to be allowed to watch his stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, the AT4 was easy to mess up if you weren't careful.
Yeah, well, only if you didn't actually employ the sights.
I watched a guy start to do that backwards, even with the sights employed.
That's no. Well, I can't speak to that because when I got back, I had to go through an improvised school right before I deployed to Iraq because I had to reclassify my MOS. But they couldn't do one portion of it, so I had to act as a range safety. And when I got on the range, we were helping a logistics unit do their shooting before they shipped out. So, I'm watching this lady and blah, 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 and I'm like, excuse me, Staff Sergeant, you seem to be having a problem. And none of her rounds, and she kept trying to eject, and the pistol was jamming, and it's really hard to mess up a Beretta M9.
Yeah.
So I eject the magazine, and the rounds are loaded backwards.
Of course.
And I'm like, I said to her, look, I will absolve you of your sin. She goes, excuse me? I said, Staff Sergeant, I don't care what your rank is. If I walk back there and tell your boss that you loaded this backwards, they're going to relieve you.
Yeah.
So she was like, I said, look, I'll absolve you of your sin, but you have to promise me you're going to get training on this weapon because this is all you're going to have when you're over there. They're not going to give you a rifle. And she's like, well, how do you know that? I'm like, you can't load this. I don't even know how you're standing here as an E6.
I saw some of that when I was a range safety as a young corporal. I got in trouble for telling a staff sergeant that it wasn't one per pay grade she had to shoot on the target because she literally out of 40 only hit it 6 times. And then it wasn't like it was the paper, but it wasn't the actual silhouette.
Oh, God.
So she might have given him like new earring holes.
Did anyone see that picture someone posted in the GE fan club of like that Sergeant Major female who was like who was wearing her whole chest rig and everything backwards?
Wait, how do you make Sergeant Major if you're that soup sandwich?
That's what everybody was asking. But it is a whole even like, what was your last day of service, JR?
07 February. That's when I was officially medically discharged.
But I understand it. Like the Army now is like night and day. And well, you made a comment today. You said like there's a whole war against the SOCOM community. I kind of have smelt that. I haven't heard anybody say it yet.
Yeah,
but,
it's
the military's croaked.
Yeah, it's not good. The SOCOM guys kind of want to do this, and everybody who's like their boss is like, no, this is wrong. And the SOCOM guys are all like, well, how the fuck would you know? You don't do this. you know, and
Yeah.
it's not good. That like a lot of
No,
my
it's not good.
friends who are still in, are army adjacent, so they work for people like the DoD and stuff like that. Because a lot of us are too damn old now to actually be, running and gunning. But like some of their kids who have been like, my dad was a ranger, I'm gonna be a damn ranger, and they're getting into battalion now, and it's just like, Dad, you wouldn't believe what's going on, and
Yeah.
there's a huge culture war, especially with trying to force certain square pegs into round holes. Like people who do not belong there, they're trying to put into those positions, and it's like, look, this isn't like being in the 101st Airborne. You have to prove yourself every day. And they might be able to get through a 1 month school or whatever, but when push comes to shove, they can't do it every day. And there's restrictions. If you are operating in a tier 1 slot, and I don't mean tier 1 as in like tier 1 super secret squirrel black bag blah blah blah. I'm not talking that. I'm talking like, the guys that we know about that we can quote: Special Forces, Army Rangers, United States Navy SEALs, Marine Raiders, MARSOC, all those guys, right? Even like pararescue and stuff like that. They have physical requirements they cannot lower because it directly relates to the job.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't make that work, then guess what? You're not going to work there. And there is a kind of like a backdoor thing going on right now where they want them to lower those standards, and a lot of these people are fighting back, and they're just not going to do it. But like certain things um, like even little things that they're trying to chip away as like a way to cause a crack to widen the fissure. Certain logos, and certain terminology is being phased out because the special people who need special help for special spaces and all this other stuff are saying we
They're
don't like
offended.
those. Yeah, we don't like those words. And the SOCOM guys are like, who the fuck are you? And everybody else is like, well, things have to change. You don't work with us. You don't need to have a say in this, but
we saw some of
Wait till they start changing the division patches
oh god.
and things like that. You think like second? You think they're gonna keep that Indian?
Yeah, exactly.
And all American. Oh man, that triggers me just hearing American.
So when we were in,
see you later. And you think, imagine that like the 82nd will always have that weird culture because it's just the 82nd.
Yeah,
I'm just saying,
that they come down there to tell them like you can't be all Americans anymore. Those guys are gonna single-handedly take over the United States
because there's
or make more gay porn.
There's 25,000 of them.
Yeah.
So
yeah. My contention would be you would only need 1,000 of them. Because what beta beard secnoid, the beta crowd is going to stand up to 10 guys from the 82nd with a full combat load. Those guys are going to run amok, so
are you kidding me? Everybody
I've met a few of them.
Everybody in DC thinks like war broke out, and you had like a couple of dipshits wandering around in buildings. I mean, nothing happened practically, and and it's the end of the freaking world. That
so
happened in DC.
Here's the thing I want to know, right? So you have this like this strange culture and stuff like that. When the Rangers, Special Forces, SEALs, MARSOC, guys like Combat Control, when they all leave and go forward into the future to what do you call it? Enter the Forgotten Ruin. Does everybody left behind become what? Like,
Dead.
what does the ruin reveal for them?
Dead.
They become dead.
So because we won't get there for a while, but like basically the nano plague, like I already written this part, I already wrote what happened. There's a whole story that I wrote about it. But basically what happened is that was when the nano plague was its most virulent. So the whole the whole thing, the whole nanoplague is designed by this woman called the Spider Queen.
I love
And you
that.
have to think of her as like high functioning Asperger's and autism. And it goes even farther back to the 1970s. She was raised in basically a military industrial complex community of the future, which the military was kind of doing in the 60s. They were like, hey, let's build like perfect societies like Mission Viejo, California. And let's put the kids in there and like let's begin to, this is my theory, like let's begin to train them for a nuclear war. So let's train up warriors and let's train up thought leaders and let's train up, scientists, because that's what we're going to need, when Planet of the Apes time happens. That's kind of how like the military industrial complex used to think back then. And so she's one of these children that's in these this experiment. They can't really figure her out because she's high functioning and everything like that. And they're trying to socialize her. So they send her to this game store that the CIA runs where kids play D&D, because what they're doing with these kids is they're saying, hey, one day when there's a nuclear war, we're going to need thought leaders. We're going to need planners. We got the jocks all swimming and playing basketball and playing football and training for aggressiveness. So when doomsday happens, we've got a warrior class. Now we need a thinker class like us. But she's a scientist, but they can't seem to socialize her, and they can't put her in with the jocks. So they send her to this game store to play D&D, even though she doesn't understand it. And she falls in love with this guy who's a jock, who they're trying to figure out what his deal is. So they're running him through that and trying to get him to play games and like that. And for one summer they get to play D&D, and she falls in love with him. And then because they're scientists and everything like that, they're like, well, this is not working. Let's put her back with the scientists. Let's get her back into the AV club. Let's get her into advanced AP. Let's begin. We realize we can't break through with her, so let's just really dial in on her science. And so she's ripped away from this guy, and she's so pissed about it that she decides to destroy the entire world and make it into D&D. And so she ends up, like, for a long time, like, just disappearing. It's like she becomes so advanced that she would be the kind of person that would make COVID. Oof. She knows everything. She knows how to program. She knows all the doomsday shit. And she's locked in a facility where she cannot, like, she just does science all day. So she escapes, and she decides to use all her knowledge to recreate the happiest moment of her life, which was this summer where she got to play D&D. So what she's doing is she has turned the entire world into that D&D campaign in hopes of finding this guy now, who is now a 50-year-old CIA, down and out CIA agent who just had to kill his best friend. Oof. And that's the initial story of how the nanoplague gets released. And the way that it's kind of like really set up is, you remember that pharma bro who bought the rights to the AIDS drug and then jacked the price up 400%. Yeah. She hates guys like that. She hates people like that. So using the nanoplague and putting in all the parameters that she wants, she begins to turn everybody in the world that she doesn't like into something. So I use him as an example. She turns him into a vampire because he is a vampire. Yeah. And so like he becomes, like his body begins to change. He begins to grow fangs. The sunlight starts to hurt him, all these kinds of things. So, and she does that if you're a gangbanger, you get turned into an orc. If you were a terrorist, you get turned into a goblin. If you were a serial killer, you got turned into an ogre. She just basically went through society and coded what she wanted the DNA, like, and how to find it, and how to, like, how it would go after, people with these chromosomes and all these kinds of things, because she knew it. She released that to basically turn the world into her D&D campaign.
Oof. That's brutal. That's cool as shit, though.
Yeah. It's fun. And that's like, it's hinted by Vandar in the books, who's the wizard, the Gandalf. That's hinted as the Book of Skelos.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which tells that story. And so we'll actually release that at the end of the 6 books to tell people, like, okay, here's what Forgotten Ruin is all about. Here's how it happened.
Oh my God. How cool would that be to, once you finish up the 6-book arc, to do the story almost like a Left Behind series where...
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be so cool. Where they're trying to find the Spider Queen to stop the play. Oh, yeah, that'd be dope.
Yeah, that's what the kid who was a jock a long time ago, that who was in love with her, that's kind of like he's being changed into a half ogre because that was the character that he played, and that's who she loved. So whether he likes it or not, he's becoming this big giant half ogre. But he's, like I said, he's this down and out CIA guy who just had to whack his best friend.
Do you say why he had to whack his best friend?
Don't spoil it for me.
Because his best friend knew the whole game, knew what was going on, and needed to be eliminated.
Ooh.
And it's like I just, when was coming up with that, I just listened to A Prayer for Owen Meany, and I was like, okay, this is perfect.
Damn.
I hope you have good strengths, because you got a twisted mind, my friend.
I think writing is my shrink.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
You just kind of get it out there and everything like that. Nicole always say, like, I have no shame, because, like, as an actor, she'd be like, okay, will you do the your penis doesn't work commercial? I'm like, straight up, they paying, I'll do it. And she's like, will you do, like, you have hemorrhoids? I'm like, I will do it. And like, I don't have an edit button, I'll just kind of do anything.
I gotta tell you, the best is the Mario voice.
I love when Jared's like,
Yep. I want to run a game where Nick does the Italian artist voice throughout the whole game.
It's me. I am the wizard, Dr. Nick. I can cast anything. Fireball, lightning, make your penis small.
Oh my God. That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. So, like, where do you think where do you think you guys are going to end up as far as, like, what are some of the things that you would like to see in the Shattered Sea / Wargate game that you guys going on? So Nick has already given me a few ideas, which one of them showed up today. What are some of the things that you guys would like to see?
I'm just along for the ride. I'm trying to figure it out.
Women with 4 boobs.
Women with 4 boobs.
Well, I mean, Total Recall did 3, and you've got to outdo that, right? I mean, come on.
It's true.
Yep. How about you, JR? What would you like to see?
I don't know, because I've read the book, so I kind of have an idea where the universe goes. So it'd be fun to be surprised and not have it like something that's already happened in the game. I mean, in the book, happen in the game. I like the idea that what we become matters. I kind of dig the idea that it was random. So like I said, I did the dice roll for it. I think that'd be cool to have that built into the game itself when you publish it. I mean, not that everyone would have to use it, but just that it's an option.
Well, that's
yeah. I think people like random, like they like the random stuff, but then it's like, I think when James would run games, that random sort of like, now you're a pineapple who can have psionic blast.
So
it got a little too carried away, but I think it's fun if it would happen once, but with James it seemed to happen every 20 seconds.
So I will say I know I'm going to do a magic user just because, like, that's the one class that I've avoided because it's complicated, so it scares me a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see what gods you come up with. I hope it's not Egyptian gods because, well...
I have never played a druid, but that's what I'm going to do.
Nice.
So should I say then, if you're saying Rothman?
Yeah.
Or do you want to wait? So I rolled...
well, I think we've said it, right?
Yeah.
I rolled an elf, and I want to be a wizard or cleric or something. But I don't know enough, so I've got to do some reading on those classes. I definitely want it to be magic, just because that will be challenging for me.
Evidently, I'm a chunky elf because I'm 5'7", 164. So,
So dragons.
Well, the ruin would change you. The ruin would change you.
All right.
So are you saying it's a weight loss plan?
Well,
because I'm game.
Dialing in first on JR. Okay, like, you want to be an elf and a magic user. So why would the Spider Queen have what, like, knowing that she was programming, selecting and traits like that? Why does she see, like, not that she would actually know that your character is that, but like, what in your makeup would cause the virus to change you into an elf? What's an elf? She would have seen elves. She would have seen elves because she was an elf in the game. She would have seen elves as noble, tragic, loving people, because that's what she is. But with an inability to connect to humanity. So, like, she would have coded certain types of people, artists and things like that, to become elves.
So in this world, do the elves have like very long lives or immortal, effectively?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was hard for her to achieve immortality,
Yeah.
but like we're already like they're already saying like in science right now, if you can make it to 2035, there's a good chance you'll live for quite a long time, like as
Yeah.
in forever. But so we already have advanced longevity techniques and things like that. If you read the Bible,
Yeah.
people used to live upwards of 900 years. So if
Well,
if you believe that, yeah,
they've actually done some math. I've seen the papers on it, where if you
yeah.
take out the concept of the the Julian calendar, and you look at
Mhm.
years as moon cycles, then it actually fits
Right,
with what we know of the period. And so
yeah.
they think that's a linguistic error. But
Yeah, God said years, so I'm going to go with God, not you and your
And
atheist.
and evidently Enoch, Enoch, I
Yeah,
think in English, has not died yet, so he's still kicking and very old. So
yeah.
if
but
you actually read,
as far as why, I don't know. That's a deep philosophical
Well, what
question, and
does
I
it
don't think
say?
I've had enough scotch yet
Yeah,
for the
you haven't
question
had
on
enough
why you
scotch.
become what you become.
Well, because what I'm trying to say is like, um, if she saw herself as a person who loved and admired beauty and truth, but because she had high functioning Asperger's and autism, she couldn't connect to humanity, and so she started coding people like her who she knew she had Asperger's and she knew she had some autism. She knew she was spectrum. She started coding people like that to be elves, to sort of become these sort of like, you know, beautiful ethereal creatures.
well,
So,
think about
oh,
it.
also
Yeah,
the other thing is she coded all Asians practically to become elves. That was another thing because she just thought Asians were elves.
yeah.
So
Well,
you could be Asian.
no, that's
Well,
true.
I guess I mean if you're describing not connecting to humanity, how many of us that came back from Iraq could that not fit?
Yeah,
Because
yeah. I
when
mean,
you see the
basically,
world at its
yeah,
darkest, like I hate people.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I just anyway.
Well, I mean, think about it. If you're immortal and everyone else is mortal, then you learn to distance yourself from everyone else because you're gonna see them all die.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's gonna you're either gonna go crazy or you're gonna just separate. Yeah.
yeah. So there's like, it's if you wanted to dig into your character a little bit, you could say, well, genetically he must have had some Asian in. The whitest guy I know in the world has 1% Chinese in him. So the nanovirus could have found that and begun to change it, or you might have been Spectrum on some level. A lot of
I
people are
mean, he's
Spectrum
Air
and no one
Force,
knows
right?
it. Yeah, he's Air
So
Force. Nicole is Spectrum, so you know she laughs, but she is. Um, um,
Popular
but
author smothered in his sleep.
no, Nicole, are you Spectrum?
We suspect there might be a little bit.
Yeah, she suspects. She suspects. I
so
always tell her I'm
hating
not
people
actually
isn't a good
married to
enough
her.
reason.
Her parents just her no, or I would say like maybe you have like such a hardcore case of PTSD that the ruin sort of like was able, like, if you can, again, we have to stretch with science, and I know, Rothman, we have to bend your precious quantum and use it
I
for the
know,
right
I know,
things. I caught your little post this week,
I know, I know,
yeah.
I
So
know.
uh, using brain patterns and things like that, the virus could have selected for saying, okay, well, there's lack of development here. This indicates this. Bam, that's the and so the ruin is going to change you into an elf because it thinks that's better for you. It thinks that that'll make you what you actually are. And then the magic is you have a big brain. You probably have a high IQ. That's why she said, "Oh, people with high IQs would be magic users."
I was going for cleric just because I've taken enough,
Yeah,
so the idea of playing a healer could be different.
yeah, yeah. Well, I
But
mean, like the cleric thing is like a lot of religion, and you seem to get worn out on religion with your last character, being that you were a new one every 10 seconds. So maybe a straight up wizard would be good for you.
And that's the thing too. Clerics aren't just healers. When you think cleric, don't think like the dude swinging the little incense burner, right? These think of like Knights Templar. Those are clerics.
So I was just thinking that based on having watched you play how you play your character, and then how Andrew played his wizard, it just seems like it's the shallow end for the magic users on play style, and that's sort of why I went there.
Yeah. The
Well, I don't
cleric.
understand. Translate that. What do you mean?
So in other words, Andrew was so formulaic in everything he did with the wizard that it seemed like he was doing advanced trigonometry with an entrance to physics, and I was doing geometry. So
I'm just saying, I was 11 bang bang for a reason. All right.
yeah. So yeah, but and that's the thing of that, like games like that. When we were playing Crimson Hawk with James, I know when I submitted my character, the first thing James did was he pushed it off to Andrew and said, "Look at this." And the first thing they did was, these stats aren't high enough. This has to be 18. Yeah. This has to be 70. And it's like, yeah, but I didn't roll that character. I rolled this character. And they were like, no, it's not high enough. So, and that's the thing. Like, when you're only having those like paragon characters that are like, it's like the difference, because, I used to work in comics, and it's like the difference between Marvel Comics and DC, right? Everybody really loves Marvel Comics because they can relate to Marvel Comics, because the characters, while still having these fantastic abilities, also have flaws, and
yeah,
it's an easier bridge to cross when you're trying to get, set your belief factors aside, for the guy who can press a button and open a crystal lens so he can shoot a beam out of his eyes. Whereas if you look at all the DC characters, you got Batman, who's a billionaire with a genius level IQ who knows 27 different martial arts. Okay, I can't even begin to tell you what's so stupid about that. You got Wonder Woman, who's a goddess. You got Superman, who's a god. You got Aquaman, who's a god, right? It's all deity based.
Yes.
And
there's no everyman,
right? And that's that's when I was playing the cleric, the cleric should have a bridge between his magic and his combat. The magic enhances the combat so that everybody else around him is more effective, but at the same time, he's still dealing damage too. So he has to be able to relate. The wizard that you could play, if you wanted to play a wizard, doesn't have to have that genius level IQ or be the deity. He can be that guy who knows a couple of spells really well, but he's
saying I could be the Gomer Pyle of magicians.
You could be the Gomer Pyle of magicians, or like you could be that guy who, like, look at Doc Holliday, right? Doc Holliday is one of those characters that if you look at like movies and literature and stuff like that, people have redone him again and again and again and again, right? He was a terrible human being. He was a drug addict. He was flawed in many ways, but the only thing that he really had going for him was that he had a good friendship with the marshal of this town, and he was an amazing gunfighter. The second he touched that pearl handle, anybody in front of that business end of that pistol was going down. So it's the same thing for the wizard. You could have that one spell that you're just like rock solid at, like Captain Kilgosha is saying in the chat. Look at Harry Dresden, right?
Yeah,
Harry Dresden.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah, Harry Dresden is not like this rock star wizard who can, materialize entire armies and stuff like that. He was the plumber of magicians. When somebody had a clogged magic drain, you called Harry Dresden. Right, and it's having the character
Magnum PI is a wizard when you really think about it.
Yeah.
He's just like, he's kind of a con artist wizard.
Yep.
He's a charming. You could be a charming wizard. You could be a con art. Like, you can almost look at a lot of TV shows and you can find the wizard.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. You don't have to have like the Andrew level. Play your version of the wizard where. And that's what makes D&D fun, because it's not going to be the same for everybody.
All right, yeah. So what would the Spider Queen have made for wizards? Just
could be
check in your mind.
Look at Kennedy.
Well, I think, she would have selected anybody with a high IQ, who was, who like the brain function said, well, this person has a high IQ. The virus would have scanned for those things, and maybe they had some kind of affinity for the sciences and for understanding physics and manipulation and things like that. And so she would have coded for that. But I think what we're trying to say is like, what kind of like, okay, here's another one like Heath Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger's Joker is a wizard.
Oh, God.
The wizard is all about
Awesome.
misdirection. And I think like misdirection and applied power and things like that, but not direct contact. The wizard can be a manipulator. The wizard, is a lot of the times using like, yeah, you can cast magic, but take away the magic of a wizard, and what they're doing is they're manipulating other things to do their work.
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily mean in an evil way, but kind of all sergeants are wizards to an extent.
Yep. Chess
They
players.
they have a group of people. Like, yeah, that's the best way to say it. A wizard is kind of a chess player. You could make a total so if you you haven't read Strange Company, but in Strange Company they have warrant officers in one platoon who have been sort of like sent into these dark labs and heavily modified, given psionics and weird powers, and for all intents and purposes or intensive purposes, they're wizards. And so one of them is this guy named Stink Eye, who's this sort of like half Chinese Rastafarian, old as dirt, bitter, drunken, vindictive guy who can manipulate people's perceptions and emotions. He would never pick up a gun and fire. He never even buckles his LCE, which is what we used to call our chest rig back in the day.
The suspenders of death.
Yeah, the suspenders of death. But he's the guy. He like a wizard. A wizard is a senior NCO in a lot of ways. Like they know how to work the system instead of getting in there and fighting the system. So like when you make a wizard, you're just thinking of a person who's learned to work with their personality and their mind instead of their fists.
So when you were in, how hardcore and tactical were you? Did you wear the butt pack on your suspenders of death?
I did. Yeah, I did. I had a butt pack. I had a messenger bag. That was pretty cool.
Did you have a fag bag?
I did.
Yeah. And for those out there who
so he was 82nd then, is what you're saying?
For those of you who are out there who think I might be being crass, FAG is an acronym for Field Artillery Gunner. And they had these big map case bags that you would throw over your shoulder, and they, those things were worth their weight.
Yeah.
Especially if you were working with like the command element, and they always wanted maps and those Statler map pens, the alcohol-based map pens. Oh my God.
Those were good times, but I think the chess rig is all infinitely a much better system.
Oh yeah, especially when you got like actual
than an
armor.
LC.
So we had the
ultimately armor is the game changer.
So we started with our armor with the suspenders, and then they switched to the vest about 2 months into our deployment for our kit.
Yep, suspenders of death.
So just like maybe you're not going back to that real quick, Jer. You don't have to be a smart wizard. You can be a dumb wizard. But here's the other fun thing about D&D. You can be like, this is your chance to actually be anything you want, and that's the therapy of D&D. Like you can talk with Walt about that and his early experience and things like that. But like you can be anything. You don't have to be you. Like you can be like, if you want to be a great Grand High Inquisitor Saruman, like wizard, go for it. You just got to act the part. You don't necessarily have to get it right.
Yeah.
So I have from Sinokin in chat suggested.
I thought you were going to say Siska.
No, he said we could be the drunken master who's only able to perform magic while sloshed. So I committed to the part that I will fake being drunk by drinking real scotch. Because I'm a method actor.
Method acting. Yep, absolutely.
If that works for you and you get joy out of that, have fun with that. And like Prometheus was very much Prometheus was basically Tony Robbins in a lot of ways. Like he for all the shit that James gave him about being evil, but like if you looked at a lot of the things that Prometheus did, he was actually quite selfless. He was always thinking of the party first, but like he had this core tenet, I believe that I'm becoming a god. Like he's insane that way. Like that's insane to think that you're a god. But that was Prometheus. Like when you play an insane character, you don't just play like a lunatic and I'm a babbling person. Like you play a person that believes crazy is the truth.
I had
that's Prometheus.
I had a person send me a PM on FaceSpace. And I didn't see it for a few days because it's not something it's not somebody who I have in my list. So when I finally noticed the message, I popped it open and I laughed my head off. They were like, "We've been watching the show and we're very disappointed that Prometheus and the cast is being changed to this new thing. Is Nick's character the new Prometheus that has been uploaded to a new server?"
Yes, he is. He's creeping in and doing a new thing.
I was like, "Oh God, that's awesome."
Yeah, and yeah, he could be. And I think this character is got a little more of the Johnny Depp in it, in a polite sort of like Air Force good boy kind of way. But he'll be corrupted.
That's why I wanted to do the magic user though, because tank is comfortable. Because when you're a gunner, like that's basically like being a tank. You're putting the heavy power down range, so I'm trying to do like break character, so to speak, by doing something a little different.
And be an imperfect one.
I would say fall back to your NCO PLDC people management skills and try to play a wizard and try to exert power in passive ways. Try to see what you can do by influence as a direct action.
What were you saying, Walt?
I was going to say, yeah, you probably don't want to touch that, but you know what you could do?
I was more grab them by the balls and the rest will follow kind of NCO.
Yeah.
But you could get away with a lot more when you're at war. In theory.
Sure. Yeah. But in PLDC, they teach you the other way, right?
Well, I didn't go to PLDC. I got a field promotion to sergeant.
Yeah. They just saw something.
I had the sergeant major of the army pin my stripes on, so eat it.
Eat it. That's pretty big time. That's a big achievement.
Yeah. So what you're saying to me is you were very excited that another man touched your chest. Meanwhile, I had my wife put my stripes on for the third time. Yeah.
Well, I did go through PLDC 3 times. I just never graduated because they kept calling us back to deploy. I made it through the ding PT test and I passed the land nav, and then they're like, "Oh, you got to go back to your unit." Like, screw you too, buddy.
Yeah.
Not that I'm bitter, if you can't tell.
Who taught you how to manage people?
My platoon sergeant, he was an acronym, so he did time in NOM, got out. And then he said, "Shit, I could be retiring if I had stayed in." So he went back in the guard, and then I was an active component attached to their unit, and he was like, he had more combat stripes than I had service stripes, and then he had service stripes. They just literally went up to his first sergeant rank. So that was my teacher. Good guy.
Yeah. So maybe be him.
I don't think I'm that badass.
That's why it's D&D. You don't have to be.
Yeah, you can be whatever you want.
The funny thing is, we had no war stories. I'll stop.
Okay, Rothman, let's work on you. You want to be a druid?
Sure.
Okay.
That was easy.
Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
Because I've never played one before. I figured it would be.
You've never played a druid? Yeah.
No.
I think you'll do better with a druid in Walt's campaign because I sense there's going to be a little more variety in outdoor and adventure.
Yeah.
I think with James, if you played a druid, he's like, "Well, you're underground again, and there's no chance you can have any connection with nature.
Exactly.
And now you're a gay pineapple."
Which is good because you didn't have any plants in your backpack.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, my good friend. And the goblin pop out and shoot you, and then they close the door. Ha
What'd you guys think of that spear ballista today?
That's cool.
Dude, I feel bad about missing that.
Yep.
Yeah, you could have gotten in on some old school siege weapons.
I know.
Ballista could have been your dancer name.
Oh God.
If I ever write like crazy weird erotica, my name is gonna be Nick Cole for my pen name.
Yeah, that's how you get sued.
Someone already did it. I think someone
What?
trolled me and did it. Like, yeah, there's
Really?
like if you look up on Goodreads, there's like one erotica novel with my name on it.
Oh my god.
It's not me.
I would call Amazon and be like, yeah, that money should be coming here.
That erotica money is all mine.
All $4.83 of it.
$20 is
Yeah.
$20, my friend. Don't judge.
All I know is that there's so many damn books out there. Well, because I was having a discussion with one guy on Facebook, and he was looking for suggestions on naming something, and I rattled something off, and he's like, "Oh no, this other person has a book that title." I was like, "Who?" And I go look up on Goodreads. I'd never actually seen someone who'd published a book and didn't have a rating. He literally never sold a single novel. But it was out there. I mean, it's like the only way that's possible is you haven't sold anything.
He didn't even buy a copy of his own book?
Right,
That's
right. I'm just like, wow, that's impressive.
I mean, most of us
He's
at
the kind
least
of guy
get
who like told his parents like, hey, mom and dad, I wrote a novel. They're all, that's good, son.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, wow. I mean, I was all ready to make fun of him, and I was suddenly feeling bad. I was just like, you know what? I'm just dropping this. I can't. I don't have the heart. It's like,
That's really saying something when you don't want to fight with people.
yeah. I'm a little cantankerous normally.
So speaking of cantankerous, I'm getting to that witching hour because I've been up since
got 30.
2 days ago. Yeah. So I'm gonna start.
That was a long day of podcasting. I don't know how you do it.
Copious amounts of caffeine, and thankfully my wife was home today to handle most of the dog. Except he went absolutely mental a minute ago because it's snowing pretty good here, and the plow came through, and he's like, "Oh no, you didn't!" So that's kind of his default.
How dare there be activity without me being involved?
Yep. So yeah, I'm probably gonna crash.
Jerry, are you doing good, man?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just you can always give us a shout out, man.
Especially when the dog eats your glasses.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was rough, but I'm more stubborn than he is, so.
All right.
Yeah, don't let that dog win. And like I said, I work cheap, so you pay for the airfare.
I'm thinking about it, seriously.
Be the alpha.
You could just move in on Walt's couch for like a couple of weeks, and his wife would just love it.
I think if he let someone do that, he'd be sleeping on the couch.
No, I don't.
Yeah,
think that.
With the guest.
No.
And women always have lady friends, Jared. Like Siska.
I could just every time you say that on a broadcast, Nick, I can almost hear his sphincter tightening.
Because it's true. It's true.
I just send her a message. I'm like, I'm sorry when you hear it. I'm just know in advance. I'm sorry.
You just need some good loving. I'm telling you.
Some
good old dirty raunchy loving.
They're even getting on this on the chat. It's funny as hell.
I have to hop back over now and see. If it's Captain Kilgosha, I will kill him.
It is. Yeah.
JR's cartoon is blushing.
JR, you just need to make love and then cry for a little while. That's what you need. She'll spoon you and everything.
On that note,
JR's time.
Before we get any deeper onto JR's spoon, oh my god.
JR's spoon is the best punk band name ever.